I want to keep me alive.
You know, I remember the first time I saw you it was on television. I don't remember the show, but you walked out, you looked at the audience and said, "Hi, I just finished a successful run in Mississippi."
Yeah.
And there was a minute, and then everybody just fell down.
Yeah. No, I didn't. First, I didn't have the wisdom back then that the NAACP, the Martin Luther Kings, the SNCC folks, they knew where this was going. I didn't. I was there because I just felt it was right to be there.
And it was quite a jump from comedy. You put your career at risk to become a tremendous activist.
But I didn't realize that at the time. Had I realized that, I might have acted a little different.
I mean, your wife never said, "Dick, are you sure you want to do this?"
No, one of the things that we had going, that we made a decision that I would never make a decision based on how will this affect my family. The reason for that is I was in the military. Now, there was no war going on, and I wasn't married. But had I been married and there was a war going on, and they say you got to go to the front line, I never would have based that on how will this affect my family. You got millions of, back then, men that left their wife, their family, their job, their business, and say, this is more important. And you don't ask, how will this come out? Will I come back with one leg? Will I come back mentally deranged? Will I come back hooked to alcohol? And so this movement was for me. This was liberating me. And I had a lot to be thankful for. I made $1,500 one year. In the next 18 months, I made $3.5 million. And I did not know when I got into show business that a black comedian was not permitted to work white nightclubs. I didn't know that. I mean, you could not stand flat-footed and talk. You could buck dance, you could sing, you could stop. Sammy Davis could talk in between, but you couldn't come out as a communicator, as a talker. I didn't know that.
But you did it.
That's because Hugh Hefner was the first in America. And he didn't say, I'll take a chance. He wasn't even there that night. Irwin Corey refused to work 7 days. And Sammy Davis and Count Basie and Sarah Vaughan, Joe Williams, and Robert's Show Club was the biggest black nightclub in the world. It's brand new. And so when you brought acts in like Sammy and, you know, the first night you couldn't get in for white folk because they bought their tickets early. And so that night, Nipsey Russell was the comic, and they told me they didn't need me. And I said, well, look, I make $25 a night, so you keep Nipsey and let him do my job. So then they reduced to the fact that I would be a MC. And an old black man told me something. He said, son, when you walk out on that stage, what you will do in 5 hours, you can do in 5 seconds. It's about making people laugh. And the more time you have, the more leeway you have, the less time you have, you just got to punch it. And I did that. And Hefner was sitting on the front row. And one day when this happened, that he had a comic that refused to work 7 days, they called my office. And like I said, Hefner wasn't there to see how this Negro would go over. And a funny thing happened, and this is my life. I didn't know too much about Chicago because I, stayed in the African-American community. And I didn't have no money, so I got on a bus to go to the Playboy Club. It was a blizzard, and I got off at the wrong stop.
Oh.
And in the back of my head, I heard that old thing, Negroes always late. So I just really wanted to impress everybody. That's the last time in my life. I ain't never been on time since that. So I get to about 8 blocks away, I see this sign that says Playboy, huge sign. And I'm praying and thank God. And I get there. Now, let me tell you why this is important and why people have to understand there's universal plans. They found out that this room I was working was sold out to a Southern white frozen food convention.
Oh, great.
And so they were going to pay me. And just said I didn't, well, pay me for not working. I love that. But I was so nervous and wanting to be there on time that Victor Lowndes, who ran the Playboy Club, was waiting to tell me I didn't have to go on. Well, I run in the door and I say, where's the carousel room? And somebody said, and so when I go up, I see this white man standing and he's trying to tell, I just push him out the way because I'm running late. And I get up on the stage at 8 o'clock and start talking.
Now, what did you think when you looked out and saw that room full of folks?
I'm thinking I made it on time. and black folks will never be able to blame me for not upholding the race, but not being there on time. They woke Hugh Hefner up, and he came over. I worked from 8 to 2. It was like a 30-minute gig. But I was having that much fun. And from that, remember, had I not got off the bus, had I not had to run, I would have been told by the owner, you don't have to work.
Mm.
I didn't. All of them crazy elements fitted in that made Dick Gregory.
Well, didn't you once say that segregation wasn't all bad because...
Where else could a black man stand up and tell the truth about what's happening in white America and get paid for it?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. But what happened was, Hefner brought me in 2 weeks later as a real gig. And another incident, remember, that was the only Playboy Club in the world. And what made it so powerful, two things. One, he had a book that's read worldwide, good writing, you know, and he had a good drink. You see, back then, you got a bad drink. And he was one of the few clubs, now people didn't know this, that wasn't mafia connected. And so Hefner was not making his money off of his whiskey, so he didn't have to water it down. I mean, he had a nice meal, you know, if you didn't put too much steak on dinner. But the bunnies, that was the big soap, and he made his money off the key. So
it was a private club. You had
yes.
that key and you paid for it.
And so people came, and somewhere you always think when you're using a sporting life, I ripped somebody off. What about the drink? Did you hear? Jesus Christ. And so everybody wanted to go. The Time magazine had an editor and a writer pertaining to the space program. He was in Chicago that weekend, and he wanted to go to the Playboy Club, and there were no tickets. So they said, why don't you go over and interview Dick Gregory? So I got a science editor. That's the only way he could get in. He interviewed me. It made the cover of Time magazine. Jack Parr read it and called me.
And the old Tonight Show.
Yes. And I did not know that when you went on the Tonight Show, if you didn't sit on the couch, you was not family. I didn't know that. And I did not know that no Negro had ever sit on the couch.
Really?
I wasn't aware of that. Until one night, sitting at Robert's Show Club, Billy Eckstein was drunk, and he cussed Jack Parr, and I wanted to grab him. Jack Parr was my man. I'd never been on the show. And then he told me that a Negro had never sat down on the couch, and I didn't know that. And I was so humiliated and felt so bad, because for 5 years, when the Parr show would go off, I would stand in the mirror and make like I was doing my act on the Parr show. And after the Time magazine, New Yorker, comes out on Sunday evening, I get a call Monday morning. I never told my wife how I felt about it. She didn't know. She was just happy. Said, the Jack Parr show's on. And I go to the phone. It was his producer. Hi, Dick. Mr. So-and-so. Wonderful article in Time magazine. Mr. Parr want to know if you want to come on the show. I said, no, thank you. He said, why? I said, because no Negroes ever sit on the couch. I hung up the phone and started crying. I knew inside of me that if I made that show, it would be fantastic. Remember now, this is not something I figured out on my own. This is something somebody else told me. The phone rings right back, and I'm trying to explain to my wife. I was so humiliated, I never told her that I would never work the show. And now Jack Paul's on the phone. Hi, Dick, Mr. Paul. How come you don't want to work my show? I said, because no Negroes ever sit down. He said, oh, come on in, you can sit down. And so which led me to believe that maybe he was not even aware. You know, you go through, you got producers, directors, and people determined, blah, blah, blah. And I went in. Hell of a night, man. Kept my wife the first time I've been on a commercial airplane. The first time I stayed in a major hotel.
Really?
And Nat King Cole's in the same hotel with me. And my agent, Joe Glazier, after seeing the performance, he knew what I had. He said, go in the office tomorrow and get money to get a house. Tell him, I don't need a house. I'm okay. And I didn't know what to say. And the next day, I was getting ready to get my suit pressed, and something was in my pocket. It was $100,000.
From your agent?
But remember now, I'm not saying this derogatory, but that's where agents control. It'd be nice. And none of them is being nice to control you. But remember, we talk about athletes that don't do this and don't do that. Well, when that athlete was struggling with the knees hurting and career threatened, nobody was there. He couldn't get a date. And then all at once you hit it big, and it didn't come from my neighborhood. It came from outside sources. And at that time, most of them were white. So I had a loyalty. Now, the reason this is important is when I went to Vegas at $25,000 a week. And I'm laughing at everybody. I'll never gamble. You have to be stupid. And then somebody told me I had a $500,000 line of credit. Oh, come on, man. You serious? So I just go out. White folk give me a $500,000 line of credit, and I'm not going to use it. So I go out and I start playing and playing. And next thing I know, I'm $300,000 in debt. I sit there and I watch those tables, and I knew that the tables was tricked. At the time, I didn't realize that if this is a sport to us, but it's a business to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they didn't build those hotels and the money people took away.
At all. And I watched something happen. And I watched the eyes and the manipulation, and I knew. So I decided I would never work a gambling place again and lure people in to expose them for that.
You ran, going to jump a little bit, but you ran for president.
In 1968.
I see.
But wait a minute, let me back up.
All right.
I was the first African-American, well, Negro then, to run for president.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as we sit here today, 2005, now you might think I'm on crack when I tell you this. As we sit here now, you are sitting across from the only African-American that ever ran for the presidency in the United States.
Why did you do it?
Now, wait a minute now. Don't overlook that.
Why not?
Did you see something wrong with that? Did Jesse run? Did Al Sharpton run? Huh? No. They ran in the primary. I ran in the final. Why did I do it? Because I felt there's a lot of people in America that realize the right to vote is worth dying for. And I wanted to give somebody something to vote for other than the lesser of the two evils. And so I said, as a write-in, I got 2.5 million votes. I'm sorry, 1.5 million. I got 2.5 million spoiled ballots. Now, it's kind of interesting. You can go to the Smithsonian Institute and see how many people voted for dogs, for cats, for their grandmother, the whole thing. Now, Humphrey lost that election by 500,000 votes. So you could almost say if I wasn't in the race, the people that voted for me wouldn't have voted for Nixon. And so either they wouldn't have voted or they voted for Hubert Humphrey. So I'm thinking a little black boy born before welfare. Didn't know where my daddy was. Determined who the president of the United States is going to be in the most powerful country in the history of the planet. And then you start seeing the power of one. I did not get into the race, and I wouldn't have been into the race to take votes away from this person so you could win. But that's what happened. And it was fun. I had these little fake dollar bills.
I remember those. It's a wonder you didn't get arrested for that.
I did.
You what?
I did. But I was smarter than the Secret Service. I had them made in Canada, and they were just $1 bills. And so I asked two questions. Do you really believe when the Negroes start counterfeiting money, it'll be a dollar bill? Crazy. Wait. You know?
And whose picture was on that dollar bill?
Mine.
It was yours. Yes.
That's what saved me. Because the American money law is funny. When you see these people, when you give them a $100 bill and they take this little marker and mark it, that marker disappears, or they could go to jail because it's against the law to deface American money. You tear it up, you burn it, you mark it, you sign your autograph on it. Theoretically, you violate the law. So here's what they said to me. That people was putting the money in the coin changers and was getting 4 quarters. So they quoted me the law before they arrested me, is that a similarity or facsimilarity of American money is a violation of law punishable by such and such. And so I said to the Secret Service guys, do you have any children, family? You like them? I said, now there are some Negroes that can be messed with, and there's a handful that can't. I'm one of those handfuls. So he said, what do you mean by that? I said, until y'all put a black person, woman or man, on American money, don't never tell me that my black picture is a facsimile of it. And that's how I beat it. That's how I beat it.
When did you know you were funny?
When I was a little child.
Really?
Yeah. From a sad point of view, I didn't like myself. I didn't like my mother. I didn't like my family. I didn't like being poor. I didn't like living where we lived. I didn't like being skinny. I was so skinny back then, you know, like people. You think people scared of AIDS, try TB. And I was skinny, and I had to go to a special school called Turner Open Air School for all the handicapped people. If you was born with no legs or no hands, I'm sitting there looking at people type and looking at people be happy. And I went there, and people would laugh at me, and I would cry. And then the guys would catch me and joke with me. And then one day I found out the power in, I didn't know humor, power in jokes, the power of laughing at yourself. So I would take all the jokes. Your legs are so skinny, you ought to sue them for non-support. So when I see them coming, I would say that about myself. And then you win that crowd over to you. And all the little hoodlums and thugs. See, they think they got bad gangs now. And Negroes is even tricked enough to believe that gang invention. 55 years ago, the Chinese gangs in Northern California was so bad, they had to bypass the National Guard and bring out the Army, or they would have burnt Northern California down to the ground. Same thing with the gangs in New York. I mean, Abraham Lincoln was sitting reveling in the sadness and the victory. They won Gettysburg. They were still counting the bodies. Within 24 hours, they get a call that the Irish would burn New York down to the ground if you didn't send the troops in. He said, I can't. We're still counting our dead. And the guy must have trusted him. He said, Mr. President, then write New York off. And he sent in the military and the Navy and then bombarded. And that's why New York is New York now. So we had bad gangs when I was there. And so I would start talking about myself and start talking about the gangs. And then there came a day I got so good at it, the gangs would see me coming down the street, they'd cross over to the other side. And that's how you knew you was funny. I didn't know the difference between being funny and being a comedian. That's altogether different.
Let me raise a different thing, because it fascinates me that with all the traveling you've done, and you do a tremendous amount of traveling, you've had a very successful marriage and family life.
I'm not home.
Is that why it's successful? Your wife forgets about you?
No, but my wife told me when we first got married, if you ever leave me, I will hurt you. Hurt will keep you home for a long time. And then when you start making big money, there's another word that'll keep you home that Michael Jordan just found out about called half.
But first of all, your wife is a wonderful woman.
Yeah.
I told you 35 years ago I was trying to get you on shows. You'd be in and out of Milwaukee, and I developed a friendship with her because she was always so nice. I'm sorry, he's in China, or he's in England, or he's in wherever you were.
Yeah.
But I thought, 10 children, you must have been home sometimes.
Yeah, just take 10 trips.
Yeah.
10 trips if you trust her. No, but let me just say this. Through the movement, you develop little things. Like, you've been in TV for so long, there's certain things you develop that you didn't read in a book. It goes into that sixth sense. And I've always believed it was about love. I always thought something was wrong with love. I love you, baby. If I can't have you, ain't nobody gonna have you. And then I realized it's not about love. It's about, can you be lovable? And when you lovable, I'm safe with you and you're safe with me. That's what I developed from being with King and Roy Wilkins and that group of ministers that was in the forefront of the movement. They were lovable. And that changed my life. And so it got to the point at home, I don't have to go home to prove nothing. I don't have to go home to argue. And then the other thing is that there's a lot of mothers don't mess with their children. And I was never home to do that. There were certain rules we sit down. There's one, you can eat before dinner, eat when you get hungry. So we never had a formal where you sit there and ate. We never yell at the children. And when the children say something brilliant, listen to them. Like one day, my wife told one of my daughters, go get me some water. She said, you go get it, nothing wrong with your legs. And my wife, I said, wait a minute, stop, she's right. And one night, me and my wife was going to Boston, and we running out the door. And one of my children said, Dad, where you going? I said, we're going to Boston. I said, can I go? I said, no, where we're going, children can't go. And we kept walking. I said, wherever a child can't go, can't be a nice place. And I stopped my wife and said, we got to go back in the house. We can't go tonight. Listen what that child just said. Anywhere a child can't go, it's something. And we went back. And so you get this by listening to children, by listening to what someone has to say. And it works.
We were talking just before the show went on there about the demonstrations when you were up in Milwaukee back in the 60s with Father Gruppy. What do you remember from those times?
It was the first white man that I met. I've known decent white folks all my life, but the first white man that was willing to put his life on the line for somebody else's cause. Here's a man got a safe job, college graduate. I was with him when he marched against his mother's confectionery. She had a little store that Negroes couldn't come in. And also learned that fear and God do not occupy the same space. We had white folks throwing bricks at us. Man, they was throwing so hard, I felt like joining them. Man, these Negroes must be wrong. We can't have this much hatred. I'm coming over here with you all, But we kept marching, and we kept marching, and we kept marching. And it kind of said to the world that this is not a Mississippi thing. This is a family thing. And King and the NAACP knew there's a certain way you deal with family. In other words, if somebody's breaking in your house and I want to stop them, I can throw gasoline in and burn your house down. But when somebody's breaking in my house, and this is what they knew. This is home. We have no place else to go. So let's correct this without bitterness, without meanness, without hatred.
Dick, this has been an altogether too fast a half hour. I just want to thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure, and thank you for being with us, as always. Hope we'll see you next time as we continue to remember.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Peace to you.